It's player preview time. Let's talk about all things Christian James McCollum. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. It's time to get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Blazer beat writer Mike Richmond. Listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and now on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Support the show. Support your boy. Support the Trailblazers, I guess. Today's show is our latest installment of our player previews. It's the Locked On Blazers countdown to tip-off. We're dedicating a full episode to every player on the roster and giving you a brief but thorough look at what they'll bring to the Trailblazers. We'll look at how they performed last season, how they wound up on the Blazers. We'll dive into the best and worst case scenarios for the upcoming year, and then we'll finish the episode with a discussion of expectations and a likely role on this season's squad. This is our third installment of the countdown to tip-off, so make sure you check back in your feed for our other player capsules. We've already done Yusuf Nurkic and Nazir Little, and today we're talking all things Christian James McCollum. So let's dive deep on what CJ did in his 8th season in the league. On the year, CJ McCollum averaged 23.1 points, 3.9 rebounds, 4.7 assists, shot 46.8% from the floor, 40.2% from three, and 81.2% from the free throw line. The not very prestigious, not as sexy, but close to it, 40-40-80 club. But really, CJ's season is kind of split into three parts, and I think that's kind of how we should attack this and how we should discuss it, how we should consider kind of the CJ McCollum experience of last season. In the first 13 games to kick off the season, CJ was incredible. He averaged in that 13-game run 26.7 points, 3.9 rebounds, 5.0 assists. He shot 47.3% from the floor. He shot 44.1% from three and 84% from the free throw line. He was taking 11 three-point attempts per game. He had totally changed his shot diet. He had kind of eschewed the long-range twos that had made up so much of the CJ McCollum experience and just said, okay, I don't take long-range twos now. I take threes. 11 three-point attempts a game. Just a truly modern approach to playing guard in the league. Taking a bunch of pull-up threes, and he was making them 44%. 4 of his 6 30-point games in the season came in those first 13 games, including a season-high 44 against Houston on the second night of the season when he outdueled an amazingly still a Rocket James Harden. It was quite a game, and it was Harden versus CJ McCollum. Those were the two stars going at it. Neither team could stop either one of those players, and CJ, just pushed the Blazers past James Harden and the Rockets, and then James Harden pushed his ass right out of Houston. But after 13 games, the magic of CJ, who was averaging 27, 4, and 5, in a win over the Hawks, Clint Capella stepped on CJ McCollum's foot on a drive to the rim. CJ actually stayed in the game briefly before exiting, and it would be later revealed that he had sustained a hairline fracture in his left foot. He missed the next 25 games. And the Blazers they weren't in no man's land, like they weren't wandering in the desert necessarily, but this was a team that they were looking for it still, right? Like without CJ, they were looking for it. And they didn't have the depth to make up for it. They were okay. They stayed afloat. Dame was really good, and they found an offensive unit that worked with Gary Trent Jr. sliding into that starting lineup and playing more Enes Kanter because Nurk had also gone down, and they found like a really good group, right? But they weren't. The wins and losses didn't come because their depth was challenged. Then you've moved your depth pieces into the starting lineup, and you really just don't. They just didn't have it behind them. And those 25 games you realized how much the Blazers missed CJ just because of how much they sort of needed. It's like their second best player. It's pretty obvious. When he came back, he returned for the final 34 games of the regular season, and he just straight up wasn't as good. He averaged 21.8 points, 3.9 assists, 3.9 rebounds, 4.6 assists. Shot 45% from the floor, 38% from three, and 79.5% from the free throw line. And from that 11 attempts per game that he was averaging in those first 13 games, 11 threes a night, right? Like he was getting them up. He only took 8 threes a night after he returned. Norm was back. There was, more touches to go around, or more, more people. There was, you had to spread the love a little bit, but 3 less 3-point attempts a game is a big deal, particularly when you're making 40% of them. Like those are points left on the board. So CJ just wasn't as good. You're looking at it and you say 22, 4, and 4.5. That's like still a pretty good basketball player. And I think that's like the lesson that we'll talk a little more with CJ. And in all, like taking the year on the whole, CJ averaged a career high in scoring, a career high in assists, a career high in 3-point rate, and a career high effective field goal percentage. He was as efficient as he's been. He wasn't his career high true shooting percentage. True shooting percentage takes into account free throws, and CJ didn't shoot his free throws as well as he had in a previous season when he led the NBA in free throw shooting. Just an 80% free throw shooter last year. He in real life he's better than that, or maybe not, because one year he shot 75%. He's a little bit inconsistent for the free throw line. It's truly puzzling. But like on the whole, a career high in scoring in his 8th season, a career high in assists, like really stepped up his playmaking game, a career high in 3-point rate, changed where he took shots and cut out some of those mid-rangers and traded him in for threes. About the same number of field goals just coming from further away, and those further away shots are worth more points. He was efficient, and he was better at sharing the rock. Like the things you want CJ to be is a lethally efficient scorer and a better distributor. That's like he checks those boxes he checked those boxes, and quite frankly, he was really good. Like he was impressive and important in all those things. But then in the playoffs, he was again good, but not quite good enough. 20.7 points, 6 boards, 4.3 assists, shot 44% from the floor, 33% from three. He really struggled with his outside shot, and 77% from the free throw line. And he just wasn't. You never had a game where you're like, "Damn, CJ's really playing well." It's like he's at the point where you can average 21 points per game and you can play poorly. Like he's that good, and the standard is that high for him. The playoffs included stepping out of bounds with 10 seconds left and the Blazers trailing by 3 during the second overtime of Game 5, and a chance to take a 3-2 lead when Damian Lillard had 55 points and was absolutely magic, and CJ stepped out of bounds. That isn't to say that like I don't know that CJ was the reason that they lost or anything, but the burden is on him. It was on him to be better, and he wasn't very good in the playoffs. That's how the season went for him. An incredible first 13 games, misses 25 in the middle there, and then comes back and is good but not great in the final 35 games, and then was pretty underwhelming in the playoffs and his season ended. Like I said, on the whole, looks pretty good. But when you break it up into parts, there is a part of CJ that was fantastic and a part of CJ that wasn't quite good enough. And I think that's where the Blazers are kind of skating right now, is what CJ do they get? And that's what I want to talk about in the second segment, is the best and worst case scenarios for CJ McCollum heading into this season. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about SweatBlock. SweatBlock is currently the number 1 product in the antiperspirant category on Amazon. How you like that? It's also been a bestseller on Amazon for over 10 years. And there's over 13,000 reviews. People love this product, and you can go read about it on the popular e-commerce website. But you might be asking, so what is SweatBlock? And I want to tell you about SweatBlock wipes. They are wipes that are stronger and more effective than most clinical antiperspirants. What you do is, if you're a heavy perspirer, you know what it's like to be sweaty. You know what it's like to have it ruin your day. So you just get ahead of it before your day even starts. You take one of these wipes, you wipe it on the places that you sweat, you go to bed, you wake up, take a shower, go about your day with confidence, wear what you want, and don't sweat it. Listen, SweatBlock is pretty confident in their product. So confident they're giving you the dry shirt guarantee. If it doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. So go spend your money, and if it doesn't work, get it back. Doesn't that seem simple? Use the promo code LOCKEDON when you visit sweatblock.com, and you'll get 20% off. Like I said, this product's also available at Amazon or at your local CVS if you like a little analog shopping. Today's episode is also brought to you by Sleeper. The sleeper experts in 2018, they realized that fantasy basketball was broken. And the games were just being won and lost based on whose players had more scheduled games that week. It's a scheduled game. It made no sense. It required very little strategy. So in 2020, here's what they did. They released a brand new way of playing fantasy basketball. It's called Game Picks, and it's only available on Sleeper. In Game Pick, owners pick a single game per week for each starter to count towards their team's total score, ensuring an even number of games between opponents. Listen, the days of losing because your opponent's players simply had more games are over. The days of mindless busy work are over. And the days of giving up halfway through the season because of that mindless busy work, well, they're over too. In game picks, you just pick one game per week for each player based on matchups, home and away, opponent's defensive rating, pace of play, all of those things. Listen, they've cracked the code on fantasy basketball. They're making it easier, they're making it more fun, they're making it more strategic. So go download the Sleeper app and start a league with your friends today. You will not be disappointed. All right. Let's keep it rolling. We've talked about CJ McCollum's 2020-21 season, and now I want to lay out the best and worst case scenarios for Christian James. Let's be clear. These are best case scenarios within reason and without injury. Everyone's best case scenario is that they win the MVP, but I don't want to talk about MVPs for guys it isn't reasonable for. I don't want to talk about all-star games for guys it isn't reasonable for, and I don't want to talk about health. The worst case scenario has to be stuff that happens on the basketball court. We are leaving this on the hardwood. Is best and worst case scenarios that happen between the lines. So what's the best case scenario for CJ McCollum? The best case scenario is that the CJ of pre-injury returns for 75 games. That three-point shooting shot diet stays. He's a long-range bomber, and he does it without sacrificing any of his playmaking ability. That three-point shot empowers him to be a floor spacer and an attacker, and his improved playmaking lets him set up his teammates and set up his own offense even more because he's dangerous both from deep and giving it up and getting it back. And that playmaking, it's so key for CJ McCollum. It would allow the Blazers to employ so many three-guard lineups. They've got a lot of options to play three guards. And if CJ can really dish, if he can really pass, then you can play three-guard lineups with Ant and three-guard lineups with Norm and allow CJ to both run the second unit and allow to step back. Because he's a better three-point shooter, because he has that playmaking ability, because he's not having to dribble into so many mid-range jumpers, it allows him to step back and let Ant run that offense. Let Ant command a few possessions. Let Norm go because CJ knows that I'm an elite spot-up shooter and I'm going to be ready for it. The best case for CJ McCollum is that those 13-game small sample size turns into a 75-game masterpiece. It also includes a couple skills that have eluded CJ for a long time. While he has improved a great deal as a playmaker and changed his sort of offensive approach, once a mid-range maestro turning into a long-range bomber, he could always shoot it. He just backed up a little bit. But the best case scenario involves drawing more fouls, finding a balance between being that long-range bomber and someone who gets to the rim, someone who earns free points and easy baskets and can take advantage of when teams get into the bonus by getting to the line and being an 80+% free throw shooter, making the Blazers' life easier. The best case scenario means that CJ McCollum, who is one of the great bad shot makers in the game, learns how to get easy shots more regularly. And the best case is that CJ McCollum is an all-star. The trade rumors that have swirled for years and ramped up last summer look foolish because at midseason, CJ McCollum is joining Damian Lillard on the all-star team. The Blazers, with a great deal of team success, have earned 2 all-stars. And that all-star spot, that midseason showcase award that has eluded CJ for so long, finally becomes his. He gets to go and play 6 minutes in Indianapolis, and you feel like it's, this special time. But the best case for CJ McCollum isn't that he is. It's not even necessarily that he gets that midseason award. There could be a best case for CJ McCollum where he is truly in consideration, where he is truly in that all-star talk. Because if the CJ McCollum that averaged 27 plus points in those first 13 games, if he shows up for an extended period, the Blazers are going to be really, really good. And then you won't be able to talk about the all-star game without talking about Christian James. The best case scenario is that he forces his way into the conversation. He's not a talking point only out here in the Pacific Northwest, but everywhere. And everyone's pointing to CJ and saying, well, yeah, he probably deserves a shot. So what's the worst case for CJ McCollum? It's pretty narrow. The worst case is that CJ remains very good, but an imperfect fit. The worst case for CJ McCollum is not really that far away from his best case. The worst case for CJ McCollum is that he averages like 22, 4, and 4. He's still going to be very good. He's for him, more than any other player on the roster, the distance between best case and worst case are very narrow. Damian Lillard probably deserves to be in that conversation. But for CJ, they're very narrow. The difference between him being extremely good and him being good is about 5 points per game. It's about one more assist and one more rebound. It's really that slim. What might feel like a disappointing season would be if CJ was just what he's been for the last 8 years, which is a pretty darn good NBA basketball player, a certified bucket, but not a lot else. The worst case scenario for CJ McCollum is that the playmaking flashes he showed for almost the entirety of last season, setting career high assists, kind of disappear under a new system, and that he is not that playmaker, and he settles back into being maybe more comfortable as a true two. And the Blazers don't have that versatility, don't have that playmaking from him. The worst case for CJ McCollum is that the trade rumors continue to swirl, because when you look at this team, you realize that him and Dame remain an imperfect fit, and that we don't talk about all-star at midseason. We talk about trades because the trade deadline is approaching. The worst case for CJ McCollum is that all summer long, when every time a trade came up, you had to plug in CJ's name into trade machine. Means that he's still getting plugged into trade machine. He's still coming up CJ McCollum trade when you're looking in your internet search engine. The worst case for CJ McCollum is that while he's good, he's not good enough. And not good enough means that the volume gets turned up so loud on whether he can continue to be part of this partnership. The worst case for CJ McCollum is that he is simply what he's been, and he doesn't take this massive step forward. And because doing the same thing over and over again feels Sisyphusian and feels insane, that the Blazers realize that they really do have to make a change next summer. And whether that means the lead guard or the two guards, someone's got to go. And it no longer becomes a question of, well, maybe. It becomes a certainty. Something has to change. The worst case for CJ McCollum is that all of this trade speculation never goes anywhere, and it comes back harder, louder. And instead of being someone who can very calmly and maturely address the trade rumors, he just becomes someone who gets traded. That's the worst case and best case for CJ McCollum. I think with all these guys, you land in it. Like, the idea of this is that it's the polls. Just with CJ, the polls are very narrow. He's going to be, even if the worst case scenario, he's going to be darn good. And the best case scenario, he's an all-star and he's just great. CJ has a really, really high floor. He's an imperfect fit, like I said, but his floor remains exceedingly high. He's a very good basketball player. Is he a really good basketball player on this specific team? I think that's the question that the Blazers maybe for some of you have already answered, but for others, like, this is the year that you really answer it. This is the year that it gets a definitive stamp one way or another, because the Blazers believed in running it back, and CJ's getting that chance. And that's what I want to talk about in the third segment to close out the show, is running it back and getting that chance. I want to talk about the role for CJ McCollum, which we know, and my expectations for him. We've laid out the best case and worst case scenarios, but where exactly is he going to fall, or where do I think he's going to fall within the polarity that I just laid out for you? But before we get there, let's talk about rockauto.com. The family business has been serving auto part customers online for over 20 years. They're specializing in helping do-it-yourselfers, but their prices are the same for the do-it-yourselfers, those of us working in our garages and driveways to fix our cars, and professional mechanics. If you are someone who does this professionally, Rock Auto can save you money, because they save everybody money. There is no special section for auto mechanics. There is no, you don't get to go behind some red tape because you are a certified mechanic. You just get to save money because you're someone who shops there. You can save 30, 50, 100% on the same parts compared to the chain auto parts stores. Don't waste your time. Don't go through the hassle. Just visit rockauto.com and see all the parts available for your car or truck. That's rockauto.com and find a solution to your auto part needs today. And while you're there, make sure you write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That way they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetOnline.ag, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Listen, I've been telling you about this all week. I've been telling you about BetOnline for a long time, but all week we've been talking about football. And guess what? Every day it creeps closer. If you're listening to this on Thursday when the show comes out, there's a football game tonight. If you listen to it a little bit later, there's also a football game tonight. All weekend long, football's here. And there's no better place to bet on football action than BetOnline. And right now they've got an amazing deal for you. If you use the promo code NFL100 when you sign up, they will match your deposit dollar for dollar. That's 100%, a full dollar for dollar match when you use the promo code NFL100 at betonline.ag. So don't wait. Head over to the website, a newly designed website at that, where you'll find odds and props on every single game. Head on over there, use that promo code, win some cash. Have a little bit of fun. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. Still listening to Locked On Blazers. We talked about CJ McCollum's 2020-21 season in review. We talked about CJ McCollum's best and worst case scenarios. What I want to do to close out the show is talk about role and expectations that I have for CJ this year. The role is relatively simple, but I think as of today might have a slightly new wrinkle. He's going to start at shooting guard. that we probably know. He's been doing that for a while, for closing in on 7 seasons rather. Like this is, you know what he's going to do. He's going to play next to Damian Lillard. He's going to be an efficient scorer. He's going to be a guy who shoots 40% from three. He's a bucket. Dude's a bucket. He's going to make some shots that you say, no. Oh, yes. Like he is special in that way. But in the past, he has been also assigned to run the second unit. And up until today, I still believe that. And even now, I still believe that too. But today at practice, Chauncey Billups told reporters, the assembled media there, that he expects Anthony Simons to take the bulk of the backup point guard minutes. I think that means that Ant will get that opportunity. And I think the Blazers, there's like a best case scenario in which Anthony Simons is a backup point guard. Like if he's a backup point guard in the league, that is real value. I'm just not a believer that Ant can do that. And it's not only because I'm not sure that he has sort of the natural passing instincts, like to sort of make elite level playmaking passes. Like I'm not 100% sure that's in his bag. But for me, it's his handle. Like last year when they tried to run him at point guard, he just got ripped at midcourt a bunch of times. And you can tighten up your handle, you can get stronger, all of those things. I think Ant looks, everyone looks a little better in the summertime. You have a lot of time to work out and don't have to play NBA games. I think Ant can take that mantle, and I think the Blazers should give it 5-10 games to figure out if that's real. But I think CJ McCollum will still get a ton of time playing on the second unit. I think he'll still get a ton of time to be a lead guard with that second unit. And I think his own development as a playmaker over the last 2 seasons, where he set a back-to-back career highs in assists in back-to-back years, like he has steadily improved as a playmaker. It's been consistent. I think his own development there means that, like, if it doesn't work out with Ant, or if Ant isn't a full-time backup point guard, but is like more like given more backup point guard duties, you can still let CJ play that. Like, I think that's the only role changes there's going to be, is like more initiating from Ant. Last year, Ant was both like legally obligated to pass the ball to Carmelo Anthony every time and not good enough to break off that plan. Like, it's both. He both seemed like he was just coming down and throwing the ball into Melo, and also not quite creative enough with his own offense in terms of getting to the rim or making more high-level passes to do something different. So that's why I kind of think like Dame, CJ and Ant will share that backup point guard duties. I heard what Chauncey Billups said. I know that he wants to believe it, and I know that Neil really wants to believe it. Neil has been pushing Anthony Simons as a backup point guard for 2 years. He's been wrong twice. That's why it's like I think the best case scenario is that Ant is capable of doing it a little bit as opposed to not at all. I think that's sort of the big distinction that I'm making here. The like in terms of where CJ McCollum ends up on the best and worst case scenario spectrum, like that's his role. His role is starting shooting guard and a little bit of backup point guard, but maybe a little bit less. But I do expect him to play a bunch with the second unit because they're going to need his shot creation with that group. Um, I do I think like where CJ lands is, and this is a cop out, and I recognize that, I really do. But like I think he lands squarely in the middle. I don't think he's a 27, 4, and 5 guy. Like, I don't think he can do that for the whole year just because I think there's more. It's going to be more egalitarian on offense, and they're going to try to get Norm more shots. That's going to be a really big deal, and try to get Yusuf Nurkic more shots. That's a really big deal. But I think CJ can be, you know, if his like sort of baseline is 22, 4, and 4, I think CJ can be, slightly ahead of that. Like say like 23, 4, and 5. And I think the 5 assists to me is the most important thing. If CJ continues to be a guy who shoots a bunch of pull-up threes and makes his teammates better or finds his teammates shots with the assists. Assists isn't the only measure of playmaking. I don't want to suggest that it is, but it's an important one. And I think it's a really good barometer for CJ because it's not just sort of like raw passing, it's passing to guys to help. And I think that really matters. So, I think if CJ's like something like, a career high in scoring and right back to his career high in assists, that wouldn't surprise me. In fact, I think with the whole season and getting his back and his foot right after getting hurt in the bubble, breaking a vertebrae, fracturing a vertebrae in the bubble, and then fracturing his foot once a couple weeks into the season, 3 weeks into the season, I think a summer of getting right, um, a summer of hearing your name bandied about in trade rumors yet again, only this time it was louder and felt for real. I think this is a year, not that he has anything to prove, like CJ, to quote him, I know I'm nice. Like he gets it. He can really play. It's not about proving anything. It's about continuing to add little steps to your game. And I think CJ can add little steps to his game because he's determined to add little steps to his game. He's gotten consistently better. He's still an awkward fit next to Damian Lillard. It's still kind of a weird pairing. But it doesn't make him less talented of a basketball player. Like it really doesn't. It makes it's a roster construction problem, not a CJ McCollum problem. So I kind of think CJ McCollum is in for another really, really good season because he's a really good basketball player. That's going to do it for our player previews. Not our player previews, just our CJ McCollum preview. We got more of these coming up. Like I said, this is our third one. So if you missed Yusuf Nurkic or you missed Nazir Little, you can go back in your feed and you can check those out now. We got a fun rest of the week. We're gonna talk about what we learned in training camp. Then the Blazers play a preseason game on Monday night, so we'll preview what to watch in preseason next week. We'll have more player previews. I'm getting an interview lined up. We're bringing people back into this video sphere. Like I said, the show's on YouTube now, so go to YouTube. If you hear my voice, if you made it this far into the podcast and you are within the sound of my voice, to steal a phrase, go to YouTube, subscribe to Locked On Blazers, search Locked On Blazers, and subscribe to the show. Do it now. Do it now. Do it now. Thank you. If you're already subscribed, I appreciate you. Thanks for rocking with me. As always, this show is available wherever you already get podcasts. So if you have a friend, a pal, a Blazer pal who's getting into the team because the season's going, tell them about Locked On Blazers. Say you can get it on YouTube. You can get it wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search Locked On Blazers, and we will be right there waiting for you. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.